gave us the PPE. It's mandatory to wear it. So we are here today making sure that we do everything safely. I think it's a testament to the people who have really thought about this election. They knew what they were doing. They worked really hard to make sure that everybody who is here, the ones who are at the poll place working, the people who are coming in their cars, everybody is here safe. They have very minimal exposure. Actually, there's less exposure here than you would get if you went to the grocery store or you went to Walmart. You can come to a polling place and do it safely. You have the ability to do curbside voting just like they're doing here, even if it's in a different municipality without drive-up voting. You can request that the person come out. They'll deliver you a ballot. They'll check your ID. You are incredibly safe to go out.
What a clown. That actually is the Republican Speaker of the Wisconsin State Assembly in full-on protective gear. This guy who looks like he's in a hazmat suit telling Wisconsin voters that they were, quote, incredibly safe to go out. What an absolute clown. Mika, of all the things
that went on yesterday?
that I've seen in my 25 years of politics and being associated with politics and reporting on politics, I don't know that I've ever seen anything as reckless and irresponsible with the public health as what I saw yesterday, where Republicans jammed down the throat of Wisconsin voters an election in the middle of a pandemic where they had to stand in lines close to each other. And yes, you can say this, the Republicans that jammed this election through risked the lives of countless Wisconsin voters and those in other states. This is, after all, Meek, if you want to know what this is about as we look at these pictures, this is about a Wisconsin legislature and a Wisconsin Republican Party in Wisconsin that has spent the last decade doing everything they could do to twist and distort the voting outcomes in elections. You don't believe me? In 2018, I have the numbers here, Democratic candidates won by more than 190,000 votes for the state assembly, right? Pretty much a landslide. Yet the GOP has so gerrymandered and twisted up the state that despite the fact Democrats won by 190,000 more votes than Republicans, the GOP held a 64-35 advantage in that chamber. Wisconsin, it's just been an ongoing effort, Willie, by Wisconsin Republicans to make sure that black voters, to make sure Hispanic voters, to make sure Democratic voters, they don't get their say, and that it's not one person, one vote. And yesterday was the most extraordinarily reckless thing I've seen in my political life. In the middle of a pandemic, just not waiting till June like every other state. Because you know what? They had a Supreme Court seat that they wanted to win. They wanted the Democrats to stay at home. They wanted to win the Supreme Court seat so they could pass more legislation which would disenfranchise more black voters.
It was a total travesty, and you're looking at those pictures of people standing outside, and you just say to yourself, why? Why? Every other state that had a primary in the month of April either moved it to June or went to full mail-in voting. Milwaukee, guys, had previously 180 polling places. Milwaukee, the biggest city in Wisconsin, 5 yesterday. 5 polling places. So not only was everyone being asked to go out and vote in the middle of a pandemic, but they were also being asked to stand in line very close to other people for hours and hours and hours to vote. They were given the choice, and God bless those voters for wanting to exercise their right. They were given the choice, either lose your vote, stay home, or go outside and vote in a pandemic. And you just ask again, why? Why not just move it to June?
Well, that's Joe, I think, where Americans need to pay attention and look at what the president's pull back and look at the big picture at the entire election process, and you can see the president already trying to chip away at the process.
Yeah, and Jim Vandehey's with us. Jim, you're a Wisconsin guy. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You're a reporter. I'll just say I was sickened by the images that I saw. We are a nation that is desperately trying to flatten the curve of the numbers of deaths. More people, of course, have died in the United States of this pandemic than died on 9/11, died in the Afghanistan 20-year war, died in the tragedy of a war in Iraq. And yet you look at the pictures from your home state and people are shoved together because Republicans forced this election today.
And about 100 people have died in Wisconsin, half of those in Milwaukee, whereas Willie pointed out there's only 5 polling places instead of 180 that you would typically have. The reason people should pay attention to this is this could really become a national crisis come Election Day in November. Because if we have a resurgence of this virus, this is going to play out in 50 different states. And you had the President of the United States yesterday saying that mail-in voting is inherently corrupt,
right.
and you're having all these states have to make this choice between one and the other. And Wisconsin is often a microcosm because Wisconsin used to have like pretty moderate politics. It used to be defined by people like Governor Tommy Thompson, and over the last 15 years has become very partisan. The Republican Party there very conservative, very reliant, as you pointed out, on the state Supreme Court to be able to back the things that they're trying to do. And now you saw the manifestation of it. And not to get too far in the weeds, the Supreme Court that said that they wouldn't allow for the extension of absentee voting that allowed yesterday to unfold the way it did. They were basically saying, listen, it's a technical matter to the conservatives on the court, saying they just don't think that a governor, in this case a Democratic governor, but they're saying any governor should be able to rewrite the election rules one way or the other. And if they apply that, or if you even look at what the Supreme Court's been doing in general on voting rights, you could see a mess come Election Day because we're expecting a record number of court challenges on both sides to different aspects of voting rights for individuals.
So, and if, you think about the conversation you were just having, Jim, with Yasmin, I mean, this pandemic we are in right now, it is not safe to go out and stand in long lines and vote, and it won't be for quite some time. We're looking at many months of life being completely uprooted. Our children are not in school. Nobody can be close to each other, and this is going to go on for months, and beyond that, it will take many more months, even years, for people to get back to some semblance of normalcy. There will not be voting in the traditional way with standing in lines and pressing buttons. Yet, Joe, we have to have our elections. Our elections are something must stay right in place for the sanctity of this country. And there's a way to do it. And once again, the president wants to undermine the process. I say, pay attention. The American people need to pay attention to what he's already beginning to do in the midst of chaos.
We still believe, even in these times, even in a pandemic, even when we have a president who is desperately trying to limit the number of people of voting, that even when we have a president who admitted in a press conference last week that if more people got to vote, Republicans would never be elected again. I don't believe that. But that's his mindset. He believes if more Americans vote, that's a bad thing for Republicans. He said it. The Speaker of the House of Georgia said it. Republican Speaker of the House said, if you get more people out voting, Republicans won't win elections. Well, that same president who we've been showing you this week, all the lies, when he says things like, oh, nobody ever saw this coming. And we show all the lies, how in early January, everybody in his administration saw this coming, how in 2019, the Department of HHS Secretary Azar was asked what kept him awake at night. He said, the coming pandemic is keeping me awake at night when we have the next pandemic, and it's keeping everybody in this room awake at night. How in 2015, Bill Gates predicted exactly what's happening now is going to happen and said we were ill prepared for it. George Bush in 2005 doing the same thing, being obsessed with the next pandemic that came to the United States. They have known. They saw it coming. Yesterday, Donald Trump lying, and we'll show you this, saying, oh, I believed the same thing Peter Navarro believed, that this was going to be a terrible pandemic that could kill up to 500,000 people. We've got all the quotes, Mr. President. We've got all the receipts. We've got you saying, of course, at the same exact time that there was nothing to do it as one person. Then you said it was 11 per people. Then it was 15. It was all going away. Well, on this mail-in voting where the president said last week that it was all, oh, this is this is horrible, mail-in voting, it's terrible if we do it. Well, Republicans will never win an election again. And then he starts to lie.
Yeah.
He starts to lie to you again, saying how fraudulent mail-in voting can be, despite the fact 50 million Americans did it 4 years ago. And states like Oregon have been doing it since 1987. Like, since like Thriller and Purple Rain and like albums and songs like that were out. He's been doing it. Like American voters have been voting since Ronald Reagan was president. They've been voting by mail. I mean, roughly 33 million ballots. 25% of the total in the 2016 presidential election were cast by mail. And according to the New York Times, more than 23% of voters had cast their ballots by mail in the 2016 general election. That's twice as many voters that did it in 2004. And so the president lies, and I got to say, he's not a particularly good liar. In fact, he's one of the worst liars since Eddie Haskell. In fact, for you people that are not as old as I am, Eddie Haskell was on Leave It to Beaver. I saw the reruns, okay?
Yeah.
But he's a worse liar since Eddie Haskell. And so he's lying about voting by mail and how fraudulent it is. And we can't allow voting by mail to happen when a reporter yesterday brings up an unfortunate point.
It's Carol Lee.
That last year, Donald Trump voted by mail. Take a look.
So you were highly critical of mail-in voting, mail-in ballots for voting.
I think mail-in voting is
but
horrible.
you voted by
It's
mail
corrupt.
in Florida's election last month, didn't you?
Sure, I could vote by mail for that.
How do you reconcile
Because I'm
that?
allowed to. Well, that's called out of state. You know why I voted? Because I happen to be in the White House and I won't be able to go to Florida to vote.
What's the difference between mailing within
well, there's a
state or
big
mailing
difference
outside the
between
state?
somebody that's out of state and does a ballot and everything sealed, certified, and everything else. You see what you have to do with the certifications. And you get thousands and thousands of people sitting in somebody's living room signing ballots all over the place. No, I think that mail-in voting is a terrible thing. I think if you vote, you should go.
Yeah. I mean, we did no need to listen to the rest of it. Willie, oh my God. He said, I should be able to do it. That's allowed because I'm not able to travel and I'm not able to vote. Well, guess what? There were a lot of people in Wisconsin yesterday that really should have said, we have a pandemic that's killed more people than like 5 wars combined. We can't vote, so we'll just mail in our votes. I mean, this guy is such a liar and a hypocrite on this issue. He does it. He just doesn't want Democrats to do it, and especially the Wisconsin Republicans and a lot of other Republicans don't want black voters to be able to do it. Let's just be honest about it.
The president either didn't know or didn't remember that 1 month ago he himself voted by mail. And first of all, Joe, I can't believe you're defaming Eddie Haskell at this early hour of the morning. You'll be hearing from his estate, I'm sure. I mean, come on, leave Eddie out of this. You know, it's mail-in voting is going to be important this year. As you guys have been pointing out, this pandemic is going to keep people away from the polls. We don't know how long it's going to last. You had Dr. Fauci yesterday talking about the possibility that many people won't go back to school in the fall. That means it won't be safe in many communities and many states to go out and stand in line all day and vote. We have to start thinking now, as Jim says, about how is this election going to be held? How is it going to be held securely and fairly? And part of that is going to be mail-in voting. And what you heard the president do yesterday is begin, as he always does, early to soften the ground and say the process is corrupt in case he loses that election. He's preparing his defense that there was somehow corruption in mail-in voting, which, as you say, has been used for generations in states across the country and already has been used this year in some of the primaries.
So I think that's why it's so important to frame this as one of the key pieces of news that happened yesterday. Yesterday had so much going on, but it's important to note that President Trump feels comfortable cheating at the election process. That's why Ukraine might come to mind, and trying to get dirt on a political rival from a foreign leader. Maybe some Americans didn't understand what was wrong with that. There's a lot wrong with it because he has a very loose sort of framework as to what the president thinks is right and wrong. And again, chipping away at the election process is something we need to watch very carefully.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.